What is up, fantasy people? You are back with the True North Fantasy Football Pod presented by Monkey Knife Fight. I am Trav, and you know what, Ty? I'm live from Dirty Laundry Studios. It's back, baby. And with me, co-hosting and West Coasting, almost was a game time decision for this podcast. He's going to be playing through some pain tonight, really showing up for his teammates there, and that would be Tyrell McLaughlin. How you doing tonight, brother?
Yeah, good. Other than what you alluded to, just spilling piping hot, boiling water all over my arm right before we came on the pod here. But as soon as we get talking some football, I'm sure that pain will escape my mind. But it hurts. It hurts.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you could make it, and no pain, no gain, as my old man would have said. And I did mention Dirty Laundry Studios there. I'm bringing it back, Ty. I'm in my bedroom. My bed's literally like a couple feet away, but I got a new little desk set up that I am fired up about. And I got a sock beside me here, so we can call it Dirty Laundry Studios. And I'm bringing it back because I missed it oh so much. Of course, we are a part of the Fantasy Points Media Group, where you can, with our promo code 21TrueNorth10, capitalize on the elite resources, tools, and analysis from the absolute sharpest minds in the fantasy industry. FantasyPoints.com, I know they are gearing up for the DFS season, and we've got some DFS content coming to the True North Network as well with the Sons of DFS that we are fired up about. So it's the right time to get dialed in. FantasyPoints.com, I mean, I've pumped the Discord channel before where they have access to all of those sharp minds where you can actually chop it up directly with them and get some insights from some of the best. So that's just a glimpse into some of the resources and the benefits of the fantasypoints.com subscription. So really, really would encourage anybody. This is the time of year with drafts coming up. I've got some big drafts this weekend where you can go sign up with the promo code 21TrueNorth10. Get you a little bit off the top and get you an edge on your league mates. So yeah, we really appreciate the team over at Fantasy Points for all they do to support the brand.
Absolutely. And, talk about getting advantages and talk about naming things, as you are doing with Dirty Laundry Studios. I think we could name this episode Get 'em High. Like we are going to go through a buffet, a litany of players that we are higher than expert consensus rankings. So we've gone through our rankings because we are a part of the Fantasy Points accuracy competition. So we're going to go through our ranks and see where we are higher on players compared to expert consensus ranking. Obviously, that will be higher than where they're going in fantasy drafts as well. So we always love this episode. This is the one to get the pen and paper out. Make sure you're circling these names. But before that, Trav, there has been a ton of pretty heavy news in the fantasy world. We are getting down to the wire when it comes to, this is why you draft as late as you can. And with the extra 2 weeks, before season starts, after preseason ends in the new CBA here, we should certainly be drafting in that time frame, I think. But if you aren't, you may have suffered a few setbacks here with some of these players, Trav. So the first one is Sony Michel, who was traded to the Rams for 2 conditional picks. One of them could end up being a pretty decent pick. Like I was surprised how much capital they spent to acquire Sony Michel, considering a lot of whispers that he could be cut post Ramondre Stevenson draft. So why don't you just give me your thoughts on Sony headed to the Rams and that backfield there with Darrell Henderson as well?
Totally. Yeah, I think the Rams backfield is an interesting one to dissect. Now, I have publicly expressed my love for Darrell Henderson even before the Cam Akers injury. Obviously, you don't want to dance on somebody's season-ending injury, but I was still loving the Hendo train as kind of a top 24 running back or after Akers got injured. But this one, it's a little bit of a dip for Darrell Henderson. I will say, Sony comes in. Shefty had a quote today, I think, that even said that Sony Michel is coming in to likely be the running back one. So I'm not quite on board with that yet. I know Darrell Henderson is just getting back into drills off of that groin injury that he had. So I think the Sony acquisition really tells you a lot about how confident the Rams are in Darrell Henderson's ability to handle the workload that we were projecting to start the season. So I think Sony's going to come in there and get significant work. I think for me, Sony goes up to like a back end running back 3 almost in that Rams offense. I've got him at 33 right now, up from running back 64. And that's I've got him just inside the top 90 overall. So Sony Michel is suddenly a desirable fantasy asset. And Darrell Henderson, I didn't knock him down that much. I've got him at 29 right now from 24 where I had him before amongst the running backs, and 76 overall from 55. So it was definitely a bump down for Hendo and a huge bump up for Sony, basically from irrelevance to relevance for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty locked and set. Like I have Sony in that running back 30 range, in a tier with running backs like Raheem Mostert, who I'm actually a bit lower on, James Conner, Zach Moss, maybe. Running backs like that, I think, will be guys who we'll have to consider choosing between in our fantasy drafts when it comes to Sony Michel. But yeah, you definitely have Sony below Darrell Henderson. I mean, I also think, like, I look at that range of the draft where Sony's going to go, and maybe you want somebody with more pass catching upside, like a Michael Carter, maybe. I don't know. It's like, it feels like Michael Carter is the guy that we should be gravitating towards in that range of the draft. But I actually really am starting to like Sony Michel in this tier. Like, I almost want to rank Sony ahead of Darrell Henderson. It's hard for me not to right now. Like, over the last 2 years, the former first round pick has looked pretty good in Sony Michel. Especially, you look at rushing yards over expectation. He's been one of the best runners in that facet over the last couple of years per next gen stat. So definitely some knee concerns, after Gurley. It's kind of ironic there. And, Hendo's definitely failed to stay healthy. But
college
when it comes to Darrell Henderson, yeah, totally. And Hendo, I think, we talked about extensively along with, all of the implications for fantasy that went along with the Cam Akers Achilles tear. And today, Trav, actually, I texted you that this is kind of the hat trick, like the third time that I feel like I'm heading into a season overexposed on Darrell Henderson. But I still have Darrell Henderson at the top of the tier of those running backs I just talked about. But, I moved him down quite a bit. So I moved him below running backs like Chase Edmonds, Myles Gaskin, just because those are running backs that I think have a situation that I want to chase a little bit more. And I think they're all of a sudden locked into a better role on their team than Darrell Henderson, I think. And I'm not moving him down too much. I still have Sony a bit ahead of him. I have Hendo around that running back 30 range as well, I imagine. Staying ahead of Sony just because of that pass catching upside, I guess, the familiarity with the offense. But it's not hard to paint this, like you said off the top, as sort of a condemnation on Darrell Henderson. Like, not the talent even, but it shows like the lack of faith in Hendo being that 3-down running back or even being available for 17 games. And not just because of the surprising capital they spent to acquire Sony Michel, but because of that history with Henderson. I think it could be Sony who is like the Rams running back to own over the second half of the season. And you add on to that the Rams strength of schedule actually gets much friendlier over the second half of the season. So if people are asking me what the touch distribution looks like, I would say Sony gets like a ton of early down work, but he could still be behind Darrell Henderson in terms of overall snaps. And certainly in terms of valuable touches, I think is going to be lost a little bit as Sony gains some steam and Henderson maybe loses a little air out of his balloon. I think he could easily score more fantasy points than Sony on a lot fewer touches. And the fact remains that both of these guys come with the durability concern. So there's a lot of upside at cost attached to both of these running backs because we probably don't have to spend, a top 4-round pick on either of these guys. And I think one thing that hasn't changed, like why I would encourage people to go back and listen to that quick hitter, is because we did get into a lot of, some of the advantages that have existed in the Rams offense for the running back position that I'm just not sure will exist going forward. And, so a lot of that leans towards kind of liking the banger at cost more than the guy who might, rule of thumb be the running back to target. And that's why I kind of like Sony, just because we've seen bangers produce in this system with McVay going back to CJ Anderson even. So that's why I kind of like Sony Michel. What do you think about the Patriots backfield? Like a lot of us were operating under the assumption that one of these running backs would go. And the writing was kind of on the wall with Sony when it comes to Ramondre Stevenson being selected by the Patriots. So what does this do for you when it comes to this Patriots backfield? And you can add on the layer that it's starting to look like it could be Mac Jones for a large portion of the season.
We like that. So what I will say is for Damian Harris and James White, my rankings didn't really change a whole lot. I like both of those players this season. James White, especially if Mac Jones gets in there and starts, I like that a lot more for James White, because this Patriots offense has shown that obviously they trust James White and they are going to ensure that he gets some sort of targets when he's healthy. And the scheme is really good for that. So, James White is my running back 43. Didn't really change that much. Damian Harris is my running back 28. So I'm pretty bullish on those guys. I think obviously the guy who moved the most is Ramondre Stevenson. I have him up 23 spots from 168 overall to 145, and that's only 3 running back spots, so running back 54 to running back 51. But I think there is some value in Ramondre Stevenson, because we just saw that basically the Patriots were just waiting to see it from Ramondre before ditching Sony. Obviously, the need from the Rams arose and Darrell Henderson's groin injury and whatnot. So, the stars kind of aligned here for this. But I think Ramondre is a huge beneficiary after what he showed. And I think it's, in previous years with the players that were in the fold in the New England backfield, it was pretty ugly to dive into this backfield, but I think it's a little bit easier to jump in as well, because you got to set those expectations, right? I think Ramondre and Sony were previously going to split the third running back role, whatever that may have been. But I think Ramondre's pretty much got it on lock right now. And if an injury were to happen to especially Damian Harris, I think Ramondre could explode for us into potential league winner categories based on where we've been drafting him up to this point. And even up to the season starting, I think we'll still be able to get value on the potential upside from Ramondre in that offense.
Yeah, and we've seen in the past the play in that Patriots backfield has been to target the cheapest, guy in that backfield, and that's
Totally.
trading. Sure, but to your point, I also like James White at his ADP.
Yeah.
And my problem is that I think Damian Harris starts to move up boards a little bit too much, and he's always just kind of been one round too expensive for me almost all offseason. A guy just that doesn't jump out to me, because there's such little pass catching upside, right? And I know that the steam is building, and maybe it is Mac Jones for the majority of the season, but that doesn't mean when you think of the goal line role either that we won't see Cam Newton on the goal line Taysom Hill
that'd be ugly
in New Orleans. I'm a little bit scared about that. Or Ramondre, right? And the fact that, Damian Harris had under 5 goal line carries last year. He was 4th on the Patriots in goal line carries last year, which is kind of amazing. So, the whole thing with me is there's just nothing to capture on top of what's already being baked in. Not much touchdown upside and basically just 0 pass catching work. I expect Harris to be very efficient. He ran for 5 yards a clip last year among running backs with 100 carries. Only Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb had higher explosive run rates than Damian Harris, and almost 72% of his touches came on first down. And that's where I have an issue, is just how defined his role is. He saw the highest percent of his touches on first down last season, and Damian Harris had 0 touches on third down last year. He has 7 career targets now. So even if it is Mac Jones, they brought back James White, and he's putting along famously during preseason action in that role. So the Patriots backs are just, what we maybe used to think of them just ain't so, in my opinion, a little bit when you go into the volume and all that kind of stuff. And really quick, because I saw Jimbo pipe in the chat asking if Sony was the goal line back, and I wouldn't mind just circling back to the Sony Anderson thing really quick, because what I just said is very true for the Rams running backs, right? And, I've talked a lot about some of the advantages that have really helped the running backs for the Rams historically under Sean McVay and the Goff era. Might not be there going forward. So I encourage folks to go back and listen to that Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson emergency epi. We got into a lot of that. But what I want to say is that, the Rams have ranked bottom 10 in red zone pass percentage in all 4 seasons that Jared Goff and McVay were there. So, they could throw way more under Stafford in the red zone, and they could be also much less reliant on scoring their touchdowns from inside the red zone. We expect this team to just have, at least some explosive plays, which have been really lacking in this offense under Jared Goff. So I think all of that put together makes me kind of like both Rams backs at cost, and kind of fading all the Patriots backs until we get later in the draft. The more appetizing I think they become, whether that's James White or Ramondre Stevenson. And with the Patriots on the mind, with the Rams on the mind, Trav, let's just go into the next big piece of news here, because if you think about it, the Rams really crushed that Jalen Ramsey trade, and that is only exacerbated by their first round pick, Travis Etienne, the pick that was one of the 2 first rounders in exchange for Jalen Ramsey. Travis Etienne done for the season, which is really devastating. What are you doing with James Robinson? Are we running it back with his majestic 2020 season? How are you approaching that backfield now?
It has been ran back, my man. I have James Robinson up at running back 18. I think he's the guy, right? I mean, he's now locked in for those 250 carries that I think are probably coming to the lead dog in this offense. And then to me, like, I just think the pass catching stuff is going to be the cherry on top. We don't necessarily know what the target share is going to look like because we can't just look at last year because this is an entirely new regime. Laviska Shenault has emerged, and a lot of people expect him to take some of those short targets. You even threw out what were those two names that you threw out as potentials today in the chat, Ty? Philip Dorsett, and who is the other guy as the potential?
Tavon Austin. It's
right,
2016 all over again. But I just wanted to say, like, Jamal, like Coach Craig brought up a good point. Like, we should preface it by saying Jamal Agnew got paid a pretty handsome contract. So it's, I definitely see some touches on offense for him. I'm more looking at it from a roster, who makes the roster standpoint.
Totally.
So that wide receiver 6'7" and all that. I was thinking that Philly Dorsett and Tavon Austin one of them would get cut, right? I thought they were battling for one position. And then from the dynasty spin, why this is important is there is a guy that's going to be on a lot of Debbie rosters or whatever, and that's Colin Johnson. And there are a lot of rumors about him possibly getting cut. And I think that possibility might be greater now with Urban Meyer possibly wanting an array of weapons at his disposal, that have the skill set that Travis Etienne possesses, just at a lesser degree, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I think that's possible because we know that Urban kind of likes to go to the bag of tricks. But to just kind of spin back to this backfield, I think James Robinson is locked in top 20 for me. And I think it's, I don't think that can necessarily be disputed just with the carry volume that he's going to get. And behind him, I mean, it's not, a cast of names by any means. Carlos Hyde, though, does go up in my rankings because I expect this to be a very heavy run volume team, especially to start the season with Trevor Lawrence acclimating and Urban's tendencies from his college days. So I moved Carlos Hyde up to 176 overall. He was deep in the 200s before, and then he's my running back 63 now after being basically off my board. But the one thing I'm really monitoring as far as who to value behind James Robinson is the free agent scrap heap. We've talked about it a little bit off air, Ty, that we are fairly certain that the Jags are going to go to the scrap heap and try and add to this room. Behind Carlos Hyde and James Robinson are Dare Ogunbowale, who is like a third down receiving back through and through, and then Divine Ozigbo, who is like a big bruising goal line type back. But those guys don't really do anything for me. They, like Dare Ogunbowale is flashed for sure, but neither have really shown me a whole bunch. And I don't really know from Dare's perspective what this offense would use his type of profile as, right? I think
and we know he only has one skill set. So I think like there's a cap on Dare Ogunbowale, but I think he's also one guy that you could add for cheap, and maybe he's this year's James White, just with a lot less touchdown upside and stuff. But I'm with you there. And Jim, I saw in the chat, was asking, would you go James Robinson or David Montgomery if you had to for 2000, like in redraft?
Yeah, so I've got Monty up as my running back 16, and I've got James Robinson at 18. So I would take Monty ahead of James Robinson. I think Justin Fields is a big factor there.
Like, I think James Robinson's going to be the most, have very little deviation. Like, he's going to be running back 18 to 24 in every sets of rankings. He's there. He's a back end running back too for me. But yeah, I'm not taking him over running backs like Chris Carson, David Montgomery. He's not, I don't think he's going to crack the top 3 rounds of my rankings for James Robinson. But I do definitely want him over, that next tier of guys that I have, like Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, Kareem Hunt, Javonte Williams. Just because, he has that locked in volume, I think. And because James Robinson probably does see some pass catching work now. And I think when we came into this offseason, I was a pretty big James Robinson proponent. Sue me. I'm sorry. I already apologized. But I would say that we were making the point that this offense can't get much worse than it was last season. And so the volume for him was always coming down, but the efficiency was always coming up with Trevor Lawrence and a new offense that builds in efficiency being put in place. So I think it's kind of wheels up for James Robinson. I just don't think we should be overdrafting him because the pass catching upside might be capped. But yeah, just looking at some stats like him running for under 2.5 yards per carry against stacked fronts last year. Some of that stuff has definitely got only one direction to go, and the stacked fronts are coming down. Things like red zone trips will go up, and a lot of room for regression to the mean in Jacksonville, and the lead running back is James Robinson, who will benefit from that. And we mentioned Carlos Hyde, like, he scored a lot of touchdowns for Urban Meyer in his Ohio State days, but he's certainly on the back end trajectory of his career arc. So, I think it's dangerous saying Carlos Hyde's nobody to worry about because of the connection with Urban Meyer and how much emphasis we unfortunately have to place on connections when it comes to Urban Meyer. So I think the big takeaway for me is James Robinson, back end RB2. I wouldn't be drafting Carlos Hyde, even if he was I just don't see any pass catching upside for him. And I don't see very many rushing touchdown opportunities in Jacksonville there. And Trevor Lawrence could take some of those anyways. But I do think they add somebody, I think, that will tell us a lot about how confident they are in Carlos Hyde. Is that a banger running back? Is that running back 100%. Somebody who shares some skill sets with Travis Etienne? But I think we're knocking down the running back market share a little bit from a projection standpoint. And I think Laviska Shenault, here we go. Like, if you want a guy who can be weaponized, somebody who can use in similar ways than that they were envisioning using Travis Etienne, I think Laviska Shenault is definitely the guy. And he's done nothing but impress at camp. So I really like Laviska Shenault. I think we might even talk about him later.
Yes, sir. All right, Ty, should we get rolling on this last piece of news here?
Sure.
I'm not trying to hijack from you by any means, my man, but DeAndre Swift, of course, his week 1 availability came into question after recent comments from Motor City Dan Campbell, coined by you, Ty, MCDC, Motor City Dan Campbell.
I don't think I coined it. I'm sure I saw it somewhere like the day he signed or something, but definitely ran with that one. Ran with the MCDC early, yeah. But he did. The comments were kind of damning. Like, you could say that they were him challenging a young player, but if we remember last season, like, it took him half the season to capture this backfield with just Adrian Peterson and a pretty hard-nosed coaching staff in place last year. I know they were replaced this year, but MCDC wants you biting kneecaps or he ain't playing you. And I think the big takeaway here is, if you're doing week 1 rankings, if you're a DFS DGen, like, you really need to move up Jamal Williams in your rankings, I think, because he has really done nothing but ingratiate himself to this coaching staff. And, I just think I did drop DeAndre Swift down my rankings. He still comes with a ton of pass catching upside, and this backfield has as much available volume as I've ever really seen. So, and high leverage volume at that. So, no matter how bad you think this Lions offense is, there is a ton of touches to be had in this backfield. So if you are lower on Swift, or if he is falling down your rankings, you really need to be moving Jamal Williams up your rankings, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I got him up 22 spots, just outside the top 100 at 102. I've got him above guys like David Stadium, McKissick, like Jamal, kind of settled like right around in there. So I'm definitely digging.
You're lagging pretty bad there. So Trav is lagging pretty bad. I don't know where to go because I don't want to kick into this next segment. Maybe actually one thing I've been talking about a lot today is the New Orleans Saints offense. I think we should, Trav and I, get together and do a quarterback summit, like some of these quarterback battles that are in place, whether it's the Broncos, whether it's this team here. But the Saints, after their second preseason game, I mean, Jameis Winston has to be considered the quarterback 1. And I apologize because I've really waffled a little bit on the quarterback 1 for the New Orleans Saints, but I think it does, the tea leaves are reading Jameis right now. And I don't think that means Taysom Hill goes away at the goal line. I think we still see that frustrating role. But I just think all of a sudden we have a ton of questions in this offense, especially if it's Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback. Because since Michael Thomas went out, we said they maybe have more incentive all of a sudden to go with Taysom Hill in a rather run-heavy offense. But if Jameis clearly gives them the best chance to win, which I think he does at this point, it makes us think like, Jameis really loves tight ends. But then Adam Troutman's Adam Troutman's injury, and now Nick Vannett is out 2 to 4 weeks. So why don't I just start there, Trav? Do you think Jameis or Taysom is the QB1 for New Orleans? What do you think about Juwan Johnson, positional convert at tight end, who's getting a lot of buzz?
Is that better, by the way? Am I coming in okay, or is it still rough?
Loud and clear.
Beautiful. Internet is not very good when you live in an igloo, folks. Just fair warning for anyone moving to Canada. I think you kind of got me coming over to the Jameis camp, just diving into some of this buzz after that awesome deep ball that he had to Marquez Callaway. Actually, 2 touchdowns to Marquez Callaway, I believe. I think one was Taysom maybe, but anyway, I think I'm coming around to both were Jameis. Great. And yeah, I think I'm just coming around. It's what we wanted. And so we might be getting it, folks. And I think maybe Sean Payton just kind of sees the upside that Jameis can bring to the passing attack, which is something that has been embedded in this offense since Drew Brees, right? Obviously, they were fantastic running the ball, but they were an opportunistic, efficient passing game team. And I think Jameis offers them that more so than does Taysom Hill. So I really like that. Juwan Johnson, I'm not really digging into him that much. I think like you definitely can take that dart on like the waiver wire week 1. I don't think I wouldn't be drafting Juwan Johnson necessarily to be something significant on my roster until I see it. And maybe I can hit the waiver wire and beat somebody out. But even then, like I'm not going to be necessarily that disappointed because I think when the Rainbow Trout gets healthy, he'll be back in there playing significant time. Or, if his injury isn't looking very good, I could see them also trying to get some more bodies in there at the position. So, yeah, I'm waiting on that tight end position. Wheels the fuck up if it's Jameis Winston, though, Ty. That's going to be exciting.
Well, I think one takeaway is the Marquez Callaway one, right? Like he has really shot up boards. He goes very high in best balls in mock drafts in fantasy leagues that are drafting right now. I don't want to call it reactionary, but I would say that those deep shots might not be going to Marquez Callaway. If Traquan Smith is healthy, I think they might go to Traquan Smith, especially out of the slot. We know how dangerous a vertical slot asset is in the Sean Payton system, especially with a quarterback who can do one thing well, if anything, and that's launch the deep ball with Jameis. And he has proved that through camp, through preseason. But I would warn that I think those deep shots will go to Traquan Smith more than Marquez Callaway. But that is not to diminish what I think Marquez Callaway's role will be in 2021, especially until Michael Thomas returns, because I think he's basically the Michael Thomas. He's going to be hitting those slants. He's going to be the possession wide receiver in this offense. And maybe when I talk about the propensity for Jameis Winston to target his tight ends historically, maybe Marquez Callaway is that guy who is the beneficiary of those tendencies. So I really like both guys when it comes to Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith. Traquan just has to stay healthy. He has to get healthy and stay healthy. The last question I have, because I don't want to leave without asking it, because I put in the notes here in case we hit this, Tony Jones. I think Tony Jones Jr. is the running back 2 in New Orleans. I think he's the one guy nobody's talking about that everyone should be talking about. And I also put here, Trav, Latavius Dust Murray. Do you think Latavius Murray is dust? What do you think?
No, I don't. I think he looked decent in spurts last season. And, I think it's definitely telling that Tony Jones is getting so much run, but Latavius is a veteran. Sean Payton does know what he has in Latavius. So, I mean, I don't want to say that he's bubble wrapping Latavius necessarily, but I think he could.
Well, he's not. He's playing him and
and
running him between the tackles and watching him fumble.
Yeah, for sure. But I think he has gotten a little bit of grace from the coaching staff for some of his past work spelling Alvin Kamara. So I know that Tony Jones is getting some of that run, but if they both make the team, I wouldn't be surprised to see Latavius get back to number 2 on that depth chart,
Yeah, Tony Jones is making that team. That is a foregone conclusion. I think it was funny that some people were suggesting that they were just giving him a solid look because of cuts and stuff. No, like Sean Payton made it clear that he was playing him ahead of Latavius Murray because Latavius Murray looked like crap the game before. So I think if you're drafting tomorrow, take them both and then drop the one that you like less because the New Orleans Saints backfield has produced, the most fantasy points over the last decade, and it's not even remotely close. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, we definitely want to target those backs. Even if Jameis is in, I think Taysom is better for that second running back on the team, but I think the offense is looking like it's going to have some productivity, whereas it's been looking pretty bleak over the last couple of weeks, but it's been nice to see some guys shine through. Ty, I'm going to kick off our getting high section. So where we are talking about some of our players who we are high on versus ECR. But really quick, I just want to give a shout out to our friends at Monkey Knife Fight. Of course, Monkey Knife Fight has all them player props for you. You can get in on the preseason action. The regular season is right around the corner. All off season, we've had all of these fight on and win some cash. And we're hopefully going to do that again this season, folks. So get in there when you sign up at Monkey Knife Fight. Use our promo code TNFF, and you will get an instant match on your first deposit up to $50. So spend 50, get another 50. You will have 100 at Monkey Knife Fight to play with.
And I think Travis is frozen again, but Monkey Knife Fight is certainly somebody we are proud to rep. And, Travis planning to kick off into our episode here. And I really do believe that these are the guys you should be circling. But I could preface this whole conversation by saying that, we did a My Guys episode last week, and maybe it came across a little self-indulgent because it was so long. But it's because we really like to argue on the why we should be having these guys so far ahead of average draft position or expert consensus rankings. So maybe I'll talk about a few of my guys, and then we'll go back to Trav's guys. So these are just players that we are significantly higher on than the industry. So my first guy, you've heard a lot about him, in My Guys episode, I brought him up as well, and that's Trey Sermon. I'm ready to take this guy at the 4-5 turn. He's going in like the 7th, 8th rounds of fantasy drafts. I have him as a top 24 running back, and he goes as like a back end running back 3. He is my highest owned running back in best ball. I just continue to say that if there was one lead back to emerge in San Francisco, it would be Trey Sermon. And I also think he has a lot of upside when it comes to capturing some goal line carries, maybe possibly being the best pass catching back in that running back room. And I think he's just clearly ahead of Wayne Gallman. And it's just Raheem Mostert, who has, failed to stay healthy in most seasons. And also we know cannot handle like a bell cow workload. So that is why Trey Sermon is one of the players that I am the highest on when it comes to my rankings. The next two guys I'm going to put together because they come from the same backfield, and that's the Miami Dolphins backfield. I have talked extensively about Myles Gaskin. I'm still ahead of ECR on Myles Gaskin, but there's no doubt that the preseason has altered my opinions a little bit on Myles Gaskin. I moved him down a touch. He's closer to like the Chase Edmonds, just above those guys in that 5th, 6th round range. But Salvin Ahmed and Malcolm Brown have definitely become very attractive assets because I want the lead back or multiple backs from this Miami Dolphins running back room. I think there's definitely a longer conversation to have about how much this team passes and how much they run, because I've been pretty steadfast in saying that I think Miami will be a little bit more run heavy than people are suggesting. However, the additions of Will Fuller, Jalen Waddle, who we'll talk about, definitely lend to that team using the pass to set up their run game, like keeping defenders back and nobody in the box. So I think Tua will have a little bit more success throwing downfield than maybe I gave him credit for after seeing him in that second preseason game. But the fact remains that Salvin Ahmed has looked really good in the preseason, and he's looked really good when on the field. Malcolm Brown clearly has a bigger role than we were anticipating. He's somebody I've been banging the drum for all offseason, but Malcolm Brown is somebody I am really attracted to now. And I have both these guys ranked as RB4s, RB43 and RB47 for Malcolm Brown and Salvin Ahmed, respectively. And they're closer to running back 60 in expert consensus rankings. A more exciting guy would be Chase Claypool, who I'm higher on. I love Chase Claypool, the wide receiver from the Steelers, sophomore, just because he's Canadian. Just kidding. I love him because he is the guy who is going to capture the 10 zone market share. He's going to lead this team in end zone targets. He's going to lead this team in air yards. So he's probably going to lead this team in fantasy points from the wide receiver position. So I do, in fact, have Deontay Johnson ranked just ahead of Chase Claypool, but I have next to no exposure to Deontay Johnson through best balls, through dynasty, through redraft, and I have a ton of exposure to Chase Claypool. So I just wanted to point out that I'm higher than ECR and Chase Claypool, but I'm significantly lower than ECR on Juju Smith-Schuster, and I'm also lower than ECR and Deontay Johnson and have very little of him. But yeah, I just want to remind folks that Chase Claypool pretty much did what I just said, lead this team in 10 zone targets, end zone targets, and air yards and deep targets as a rookie last season. So I think he came in a little bit raw. He's an undefendable player when it comes to back shoulder throws. Nobody can defend that. So give me Chase Claypool, Mapletron for life, and I think he will certainly pay off his ADP. I think he's one of the biggest buys in all of Dynasty as well, because he's also tailor-made for this Matt Canada offense that's going to be rolled out in Pittsburgh. Trav, glad to have you back. I'm going to do one more guy, and I really want to ask you about this guy because it's Robbie Anderson, who just re-signed with the Carolina Panthers with this college coach, Matt Rule. They will be tethered together for possibly the entire long rule of Matt. But I really like him at cost, and I really like what Carolina's done with Robbie Anderson, and we suggest that he might re-sign because of how sexy his role has grown into since going from Gase to Matt Rule in Carolina. So I have him as 48th overall player. So I am ready to take him at that 4 or 5 round turn with Robbie Anderson. He's 70th overall, so I'm plus 22 on him. He's a 4th, 5th round pick for me who's going in that 7th round range. And I also have Robbie Anderson as a top 24 wide receiver. So Trav, has some of the buzz, the preseason, has it built enough for you where you're ready to take Robbie Anderson? Or do you worry that Sam Darnold might not be able to support DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey, of course, and possibly Terrace Marshall, who has also exploded during the preseason?
Yeah, well, I think for me, the worry is Christian McCaffrey, not necessarily whether the offense or Sam Darnold can support these guys. I think Christian McCaffrey's share, and it's not necessarily just for Robbie Anderson. I think I might just be a little bit cautiously optimistic for all these guys, right? So you said that ECR for Robbie is wide receiver 30, and I've got him right at 31. So I'm just a little bit low on him, but like right there with ECR, I guess. But I love your top 24 because I love me some Robbie Anderson, and I could see myself regretting not going higher on him because I think he's got the skill set. I think Sam Darnold does like to go downfield more so than Teddy Bridgewater, and I think that can play into Robbie Anderson's skill set, which he has more of than just that, which we learned last year in this offense. I mean, before Robbie Anderson was that send him deep shot guy that's kind of in the mold of, say, like a Will Fuller type, but now he is so much more versatile in this offense. They use him in the slot, they use him on short crossers, they use him all over the field, sometimes as kind of that alpha profile wide receiver. So I really like that for Robbie, and I could easily see him outdoing my wide receiver 31 ranking, and I might even have to look at that and have a little tinker tie, as obviously with rankings you're always tinkering a little bit. And Robbie Anderson might be one that I take a second look at here, just because I do like the offense. Christian McCaffrey does worry me, but does he worry me that much to where Robbie Anderson could be the guy that takes a dip from it? I'm not so sure. So I'm definitely going to have a look at that. And I really like your ranking of 23 and just how you're kind of betting on Robbie, especially after, he got that new deal. I think it was 2 years, $29.5 million.
And it really comes down to the usage. Like it does, you were pointing out there, just all the different usage, the route tree, the expansion of the role and everything. And Dan Pizzuto, I think of Sharp Football, wrote an excellent piece about, wide receivers who were changing their level of speed, which I think is an underrated thing in sports, whether you're a point guard, whether you're a forward in hockey, whatever it is. Speed adjustment is kind of the key, not just, top line speed. You need to be able to adjust that speed and know when to go. Like DK Metcalf's another great example of that. I think there's no doubt that the talent's there, the situation is there. And I really, really love this situation because there's no doubt that what I'm about to say was done without Christian McCaffrey, but the Panthers used 3+ wide receivers about 70% of the time last year, 71% market share, 3rd most in the league when it comes to the wide receiver position. They ranked 10th in yards per target. They were just, so all of that is something that, yes, Christian McCaffrey will impact negatively probably. But I would argue the other way, saying that, this wide receiver group might not be top 5 in receiving yards per game. Let's not forget that the wide receivers in Carolina put up over 200 yards combined per game last year, but they were 28th in wide receiver touchdowns in 2020. So there's a lot of regression there. So we talked about Pittsburgh last year, and I could have gone way longer on Claypool about how, long story short, he is the one who will not experience as much regression as Claypool, as Deontay and Juju. So 2 teams managed 3 200+ PPR scores at the wide receiver position last year, Pittsburgh and Carolina. They had pretty similar when it comes to their top 3 guys combining for catches. But the Steelers wide receivers, those 3, Deontay, Claypool, and Juju, combined for 25 touchdowns. And then the big 3 in Carolina, none of them had more than 4 touchdowns last year in the receiving game. They combined for just 10. So it's It's pretty incredible. Like if you look at wide receiver scoring combined for all teams last year, the top 10 teams in wide receiver PPR points had 24 wide receiver touchdowns on average last year. The Panthers, who scored the 9th most fantasy points, had 10. They were the only team who had under 17 who finished in the top 10 last year. So I think there's a lot of room for Christian McCaffrey to come back, this system to actually continue to ascend, and all of that to come together as a confluence of events. And the one question I'm left with is, maybe I should be higher on Sam Darnold.
Dude, I actually am. I am a little bit higher on Sam Darnold. I have him at 157 in EC or in overall ranking, and 173 is his ECR overall ranking. So roughly 20 spots or so higher. But we're going to stick in Carolina and lead me into my next guy, Ty, that you mentioned, and that would be Terrace Marshall. I think Sam Darnold is a beneficiary of coming to this offense and being involved with Matt Rule and Joe Brady. And I think Terrace Marshall is a factor there. You were talking about the 3 wide receiver sets, and I don't think that's going to change just because Christian McCaffrey, like, sure, the target volume for maybe the 3rd wide receiver might dip a little bit, but the usage of 3 wide receiver sets is not really going to change, because if you look at when Mike Davis was in there, they still gave him 70 targets in the over the season, which is not a small amount for running backs. That was the 5th most among running backs in the league. So maybe not Christian McCaffrey levels, but they still heavily targeted the running back still and used those wide receivers to perfection. So Terrace Marshall, I have him 63 spots higher than ECR, Ty, at 135. I think that's probably about a 11th, 12th round pick. And I have him as my wide receiver 58, where ECR has him as the wide receiver 74. And it's just because the fact that this team is going to use 3 wide receiver sets a lot. We've already seen him pop in the preseason. He gets yards after catch. He's big. He goes down the field. He can do work in the slot. We saw him do really nice work in the slot at LSU. And he was a touchdown machine at LSU, even with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in that Joe Burrow season. Terrace Marshall scored double-digit touchdowns then. So I just think that the recipe is there for him to slot in there. And I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if he was challenging for the top rookie wide receiver come season's end, because I think he's got that alpha talent. Like, this was a draft with a lot of smaller wide receivers who project to play the slot. If you're looking behind Jamar Chase, obviously at one of those guys who can profile as an alpha, it's Terrace Marshall, no brainer for me. And when he was slotted into that offense, it's just, give me that all day. I have a lot of exposure to Terrace Marshall. And I think by season's end, he's going to be slotting in and giving me wide receiver 2 weeks, no problem from time to time.
Yeah, I think I have him like 130th or so in my overall rankings. And I think what gets lost a lot of times is the upside. Like, what if DJ Moore or Robbie Anderson gets hurt? This guy could really go off, and that would, most likely occur towards the back half of the season. So always a guy that I might be looking to trade for when it comes to midseason acquisitions. Trav, one guy I am pretty high on is Elijah Moore. I know we haven't seen a lot of him, and we've seen a lot of Corey Davis in the preseason, and the buzz is kind of building. Elijah Moore is back on the field now. I have him as my 89th overall player. That is like ridiculously higher than ECR. I have him as a wide receiver 4, and he's going as like a wide receiver 5 or 6 if you're lucky. Now, I do expect that to start moving up, but do you think we see him at all during the preseason? And how do you see that Jets wide receiver room shaking out? Because Corey Davis is definitely moving up boards. Jamison Crowder is another player we haven't seen during the preseason, but still exists.
Totally. And I think your ranking is a little bit spicy, I will say, for Elijah Moore coming in as a rookie with a rookie quarterback in a transitioning offense. Like, I think he has that ability. I think Zach Wilson has a lot of that ability. I just kind of wonder about the target distribution and whether he'll be able to take enough for him to be able to achieve those, late 7th, early 8th round draft prices that you're looking at there, Ty. I just, Scott Barrett's going to kill me for this Elijah Moore slander. So I apologize to both of you for that. And it's not necessarily slanderous because I love the talent. I just think it might take into year 2, maybe into year 3 before we see that ultimate upside from him, just because of all the transition and the fact that if we're looking at the LaFleur offense, we look at Kyle Shanahan, where he came from. That is a run heavy offense. So Elijah Moore would just have to wrestle that work away from a lot of these guys, namely Corey Davis, who's somebody I have a fair bit higher than ECR personally. So I just don't quite see it yet for Elijah Moore. I just think that would be almost like ceiling ranking for him, which, you know, if he hits that ceiling, it's going to be friggin' electric. And then, you know, that just means you can rejoice at that Elijah Moore, because if you're, you know, like, I know that you're one to put your money where your mouth is, especially on these upside wide receivers, you're going to be laughing come season's end if he does hit that upside with where you're drafting him.
Yeah, he's the next Tyler Lockett. I'm telling you.
I like it. I like it. Lock it up, folks. Lock it up. Before you,
and yeah, at least we didn't get. You mentioned Scott Barrett and Elijah Moore. At least we didn't get a blue screen of death there.
Yeah. So before we move off of the Jets, I did mention Corey Davis there. What do you think about him? Because I think of him as the wide receiver one for this offense, the alpha guy who's going to get the targets. He's looked pretty good in the preseason, some rapport with Zachary Wilson. What do you think about Corey Davis and his? I've got him ranked at 79, so a little bit higher than you've got Elijah. But I definitely have him as, you know, just like a back end wide receiver 3 for fantasy.
I don't mind Corey Davis. I just think he's going to get moved out. Like, I have him in my top 100 as well, maybe just inside my top 100. But I do have him below Elijah Moore because some of that deep passing work that we've seen in the preseason, I'm not necessarily sold is going to go to Corey Davis and is not going to go to Elijah Moore. I see Corey Davis as more of that intermediate guy. Maybe Jamison Crowder plays that short underneath route. And I think Elijah Moore is the guy who can do whatever the fuck he wants. Like, and he will do whatever the fuck he wants because defenders won't be able to fucking stop him. So I just think Elijah Moore is the guy who comes with all the upside. And I think we can capture that upside because of what Zach Wilson has shown us in the preseason. It's mostly Zach Wilson's performance, and even Corey Davis's for that matter, that has actually elevated Elijah Moore even more in my rankings leading up to fantasy drafts. He's just a guy that I'm targeting as we get into the double digit rounds, because that's really where you can get this guy in fantasy drafts right now.
Definitely. And he's going to pop off for at the very least, he's going to pop off for some spike weeks in Elijah.
And I think they're going to give him some manufactured touches as well. Like, I think Elijah Moore is the juice that's going to make that engine go. Besides Zach Wilson, I don't think this team's going to go as Corey Davis goes, or goes as Jamison Crowder goes, or goes as Tevin fucking Coleman goes. Like, you know, I think Michael Carter is somebody we're kind of targeting in the same range of the draft, but Elijah Moore is somebody that I think will easily outscore a lot of wide receivers that are going in the same range of the draft as him. And I think he could be that perfect wide receiver 4 or 5 who can offer you maybe some manufactured touches and come with a little bit of a floor, but he definitely comes with that upside, and I think Zach Wilson will deliver on some of that upside for his wide receivers.
No, I like it. I like it. So I got a couple more wide receivers here for you, Ty. I'm excited to get into putting some of our ranks up against each other's and talking about some of these other guys here. The first one is Michael Gallup. I am 24 spots higher than expert consensus on Michael Gallup. I have him as my 80th overall player. ECR has him at 104. He is my wide receiver 37, so just outside the top, the wide receiver 3 range. But I think like he pays that off. You know what? Let me just check that, because I got to check my notes, because wide receiver 37 seems a little bit low versus where I think I would have him. Okay, no, he's right around there. So wide receiver 37, but I think he could exceed that easily in this offense. I think this might be one of those offenses that produces those 3 top 24 wide receivers, much like what we saw from the Carolina offense last year. So I'm definitely going to dive into that wide receiver 37 ranking, but I think 80 overall, I'm still pretty high on Michael Gallup. We love that offense. We've talked about it a lot. The other guy I wanted to talk about, Ty, you were talking about Elijah Moore, the young budding rookie. I'm talking about old faithful T.Y. Hilton. I think we haven't heard much about T.Y. whatsoever. Obviously, he's old. He's had some injury issues, obviously. He came back pretty decent at the end of last year, though. I have him at 96 overall because I do think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for this team. And he's 139 in ECR, so that's 42 spots. I have him as my wide receiver 43. I just think, like, whatever you think of Brandon Cooks in that offense in Houston, T.Y. Hilton is just like a little bit like a tier below version of that. He's that veteran wide receiver who I think is going to be the wide receiver 1 on a better offense. And obviously he's not going to be the only option like Brandon Cooks is, but I think T.Y. might be able to soak up enough targets, especially with Carson Wentz throwing the ball downfield. Michael Pittman hasn't really shown us a ton at the NFL level. I am on T.Y. Hilton this year as somebody who could give you those wide receiver weeks as, the low key top target on this team. What do you think? I know these aren't guys that you'll traditionally be targeting in drafts, though, Ty. So what do you think about just T.Y.'s potential for 2021?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the take. Like, and I don't mind T.Y. Hilton as an asset. Like, I do have Michael Pittman ahead of him from that offense, but I've definitely felt insulted by the comp. Like, I think Brendan Cooks is just like one of the best values in all of fantasy
That's
right
why I
now.
said it's a tier below. It's a tier below.
But I just think Hilton, like, that might have been true 4 years ago. I just think that 4-year age difference is a big difference. And I think that is literally the difference between the two. Like, I just don't have faith in a small, tiny 31-year-old T.Y. Hilton that I once did. Whereas, Brendan Cooks, I think, is still very much in his prime. I mean, T.Y. Hilton was born in 1989, Trav.
I'm just talking about like the role, and like I'm talking about we were born in 1989 too. And I'm not just talking about like the talent or the age. Like I'm just talking about the potential role that he's going to have within the offense.
Yeah, and I think that might be a little bit overblown. Like I think this is going to be a very run-heavy offense with limited deep shots, even off of play action. Like if they want to be a better team than the Tennessee Titans, they're going to have to be careful. I'll put it that way. I just think, I'll put it this way: as long as the offensive line is super healthy and everything, like I just think a lot of things have to come together for T.Y. Hilton to pay off. Do I think he comes out and has a Tyler Lockett style season? Maybe. Like where he gives you 3 or 4 huge weeks, maybe. But I don't think when I look at their schedule, when I look at Michael Pittman ascending in that room, I just don't see the spot for T.Y. Hilton in what I think is like a pretty depressing offense in Indianapolis, to be honest, outside of that run game.
Yeah,
I
sure.
don't think he's a bad pick. Like he's going so cheap where if T.Y. Hilton doesn't work out, you can drop him for somebody else, right? Like It's one of those guys where he's going in a range where there's almost no risk to taking him. But I would just rather grab the 23-year-old who's going ahead of him in ADP in Michael Pittman. And it just goes where like T.Y. Hilton, I don't own a lot of them just because I am taking different positions, whether it's quarterback, tight end, maybe running back in that range. And I usually have a lot of my wide receivers on my team, but he's also going around a lot of guys that I still like a little bit more than him as well.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I'm just in on it, man. I'm not ready to leave him for dead just yet. Final 6 games last year, he averaged about 14 PPR points a game. And I just think that his quarterback play could get better this year, or maybe more efficient, let's say. So that's why I'm not putting him to bed just yet. Yeah. TY, baby.
Definitely a lot of room for him to pay off his ADP. What about like we're talking about let's go to Jalen Waddle, because I'm much higher on Jalen Waddle than ECR. I think I have him at 82nd overall, and I think he's going like at the end of the 10th round there. So a 7th, 8th round pick, who I think is going in 10th, 11th round range. And it just goes back to I don't mind if you have Will Fuller over him. I have Will Fuller over him. But for some reason, I think Jalen Waddle is kind of the guy to own in that Miami wide receiver room, just because he has the rapport with Tua built in. We know that he's already on the field in preseason, which is very encouraging, I would say. And I just think he will get the manufacturer touches. He'll get some quick work and he'll get the ball in his hands. And I also just think he can go deep, and he has that rapport and that chemistry with the quarterback. And I just think it's wheels up for him, and you don't have to spend very much to get a Jalen Waddle. And I think the upside is just really immense with Waddle. And then you add on the fact that if Will Fuller was to get hurt, which is what I think is a big impediment to his value right now, it's wheels up, and Will Fuller has gotten hurt before.
No, absolutely. I'm not really trying to attack this passing game in Miami, but if I am, it's definitely Jalen Waddle. Like you said, he gets downfield. He's great downfield, but he's got a lot more versatile skill set than that. People were comping him to Tyreek Hill a lot in the preseason. I don't think he's quite like that, but I do see that he plays a little bit bigger than what his size would indicate, somewhat like Tyreek Hill does. And so I think,
said during the process, like, we're sick of Tyreek Hill comps. I get it. But since Tyreek Hill has become a thing, this is the closest prospect to Tyreek Hill that we've seen. Yeah, he won't have Patrick Mahomes throwing to him. He won't have Andy Reid scheming up plays for him, but he does have a skill set that is on par or close to Tyreek Hill. He is that athletic, that sparky, and that versatile at that size. So I love everything about Jalen Waddle. I think it's wheels up. And I think we need to start getting on board with some of these rookie wide receivers that we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a really good season for projected rookie wide receiver usage, right? Like these guys jumped into rooms where there's a bunch of opportunity. Rondale Moore is another big one that's looking really good. Elijah Moore, you talked about. Terrace. Why don't you get into that one, Ty?
Well, I had Rondale because I thought, we were going to dish a few guys, and I was lucky to get, a little bit. So in this next range, once you're getting into the double-digit rounds of your fantasy drafts, I wanted to give, 3 or 4 wide receivers that we should be targeting, because these wide receivers definitely come with lower hit rates, but we still are obviously trying to identify the proper wide receivers to add to the back end of our wide receiver room. And I picked out 4 guys that I love, and Rondale Moore is one of those guys because he's clearly getting those manufactured touches in the preseason. They are really feeding him the rock, and it's kind of contrary to how I suggested he might be used, and that's as a vertical slot element in that Cliff Kingsbury offense that has been so famous. So I think there's an element that maybe they aren't showing everything in the preseason, like they aren't showing their hand, and maybe we do see some of that deep work from Rondale Moore. I would almost guarantee it.
I want it.
Yeah, and I think if that is introduced to the, in addition to the manufactured touches and the quick passes and the screens and all that stuff, the jet sweeps, like it is wheels up for Rondale Moore. And I just really don't think they showed us very much in the preseason. But what they showed us in the preseason is making his value rise. So I think add on a shitload of upside on top of that, and that is where Rondale Moore's value is right now. Mecole Hardman is another guy that I just think he's having a good preseason. Fool me once, whatever. But, he was a positional convert. He was a raw prospect. He was overdrafted in a lot of people's eyes. So I think an incubation period is more than fair, and we have allotted him that incubation period. But the lack of additions in the wide receiver room in Kansas City, I think there's not a lot of excuses left for a Mecole Hardman. And so long as he's getting 60, 70% snaps, he's going to be somebody that we're looking at on a weekly basis. And I know they brought Demarcus Robinson back, but Mecole Hardman really looks like the guy in preseason. Manny Sanders, I love. I have a lot of Emmanuel Sanders. He's one of my highest owned players in best ball. He is vaccinated, and I know Gabriel Davis and Cole Beasley are on the close contact thing right now.
Yeah.
And that is something that we could see as a reoccurring fucking theme with these unvaccinated players. That's why I said this isn't like some political statement. I'm saying for fantasy football value, you need to be aware of who is vaccinated and who is unvaccinated, because it could be the determining factor when it comes to start-sit decisions, when it comes to who you draft in the later rounds, when it comes to a team deciding on a wide receiver 5 to keep on or wide receiver 6 or 7 to keep on the roster. So Emmanuel Sanders checks every box, including just being a guy who can play into his later years and in one of the best offenses in all of football. And don't get me wrong, I'm actually still higher on every single Bills wide receiver compared to ECR and average draft position. I just think Emmanuel Sanders is a guy that I'm really gravitating towards once I get into the double-digit rounds of my fantasy drafts. And another guy is Russell Gage in that same range. I have him as in my wide receiver 50 range, where I'm definitely a good couple rounds higher than ECR and ADP on him as well. Did any of those guys really jump off the page to you, Trav?
Well, I mean, Mecole Hardman always jumps off the page for me, Ty. You know I love me some Mecole, and I am ready to get my heart broken one more time by Mecole. I'm in it this year. I'm in it. Russell Gage is a no-brainer, man. He's like the cheapest 120 target player you're going to find. Rondale, you talked about those manufactured touches. That was what I need to see. Put him in that Christian Kirk role from last year, where Christian Kirk was going deep as well, like you said, and Rondale could, be also the highest finishing rookie. Like these guys have some huge blow up potential. So it's a good year to be diving into the rookie wide receivers. I got a couple here as well, Ty, and one of them is a rookie, and that would be Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I don't think he offers you the upside of a Rondale or an Elijah Moore. Obviously, these guys are in offenses that we're trying to get pieces of, that we're a little bit excited about. Detroit is not one of those by any means. But Amon-Ra St. Brown's looked pretty good in the preseason, man, and in camp, and it looks like he could be potentially their highest targeted wide receiver on the Detroit Lions. And I think my evaluation on him coming in was that he was going to be kind of a not mega exciting slot guy who can do some work after the catch. And I think he profiles really nicely with Jared Goff if he's going to be in that role. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, I have him at 159 overall because I do think that he probably is the most targeted wide receiver here. ECR has him at 202nd overall, so I'm about 40 spots higher. I've got him at wide receiver 65 over wide receiver 73, which is ECR. So I think Amon-Ra St. Brown late in the draft has the potential, much like Russell Gage, actually, to give you almost triple digit targets for almost nothing in drafts. So I definitely like a lot of these rookie wide receivers. Another one has been another preseason darling, Ty, and that would be Jakobi Meyers in New England. He was very heavily targeted by both Mac Jones and Cam Newton in that game against the Eagles. Jakobi Meyers shredded the Eagles secondary. So I think with him, his ECR is 160, and we've seen what the slot guy in the New England offense can do. So I think Jakobi Meyers is a solid investment for some safety. So it's a good time to target that Patriots wide receiver. And then lastly, I've been touting them all off season. And that would be my man, Deshaun Jackson. I am willing to go back to the well because Deshaun Jackson is free. Okay. The Rams have given us a lot of 3 wide receiver sets in the past, and they've got some injury concerns with their running back room right now. They just brought in Matt Stafford to be that quarterback that can put the team on his shoulders. And attached to his shoulder is a rocket fucking arm, Ty. And I think that plays really well into Deshaun Jackson being the deep threat. Obviously, we've got the injury concerns with Deshaun Jackson. I'm not saying that he's going to give you a full 16 and give you 1,400 yards on all this deep work that he's going to get by any means. But I think in spot situations, we could potentially see D-Jax build a little bit of consistency where if he's getting 2 or 3 deep shots a game, that's the upside play you want to put in your flex. If, say, on a Thursday night, your team doesn't do very good, you get a couple of stinkers or something, Deshaun Jackson could be that guy where you kind of throw down for the lowdown and try and get that W in your league. So Deshaun Jackson, I mean, his ECR is 255. He's basically going undrafted. I am a very nice 69 spots higher on him at 186. So it's Deshaun Jackson. I just think if he can give us 8 to 10 games, he's going to pay off for that, freebie that you're getting in investing him. So those are a few wide receivers I like. Do you like any of those guys, like Jakobi, Amon-Ra, D-Jax? Is there any of those that you're targeting, Ty?
I like all 3 of those guys for real, especially at ADP. I like all 3 of those guys. I think you got guys who are a little bit deeper into the draft even than I took, right? So I think this meshes pretty well. And I think Deshaun Jackson's somebody that I think is a perfect last round pick in your redraft league because you could obviously drop him. You have IR positions and you could literally start this guy in week 1 or 2 and hope for the best when it comes to, those deeper leagues where you're starting 3 wide receivers and you have multiple flex positions. That's the league where I really think Deshaun Jackson makes a ton of sense. Amon-Ra, I'm not super interested in him. I love Amon-Ra, but what are you going to draft him as your wide receiver 50? And he gives you wide receiver 38 at the end of the season. So I think there's definitely a cap in that facet of the game, like the ceiling, the spiked weeks even. And then the other guy, Jakobi Meyers, is somebody that I've been just super high on all offseason, all last year. I mean, the touchdown regression is just hysterical. Like, it's so funny looking at how much regression to the mean he could experience if it's Mac Jones under center compared to Cam Newton, who really just stripped this offense of wide receiver touchdowns last year. So Jakobi Meyers has a lot of room to break out. I think he might have been the best guy at delivering passing touchdowns in New England last year.
Burn.
But I think with Mac Jones especially, he will rise up boards. And I think Jakobi Meyers is somebody that you need to get on now because you won't be able to get him where you're getting him now a week from now. And it's been like that for about a month now with Jakobi. No jabroni.
No jabroni, and he ain't no phony macaroni.
Speaking of jabronis, I have the complete antithesis of jabronis here because I want to talk a couple quarterbacks and their rookie quarterbacks. The number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence was announced as the starter. In case anybody didn't hear that breaking news, eat your heart out, Gardner Minshew, or get him to a better locale. But Trevor Lawrence is like, I have him at my, like, he's just around my top 100 picks. And I think he's going in like that late 11th round range. So I think Trevor Lawrence is a spectacular value right now. And the other guy is Trey Lance, who I've talked extensively about. Just want to throw him out there again because I'm so freakishly ahead of ECR when it comes to Trey Lance. And I think even in a one quarterback league, I might stash this guy if I can, because I think the latest is going to be that week 6 bye when we see Trey Lance. But I think he probably starts week 1 just because of the high upside variance that he can bring to this offense that Jimmy Garoppolo can't, i.e. the mobility and the deep shots with that arm strength. So lots of reasons to like some of the rookie quarterbacks. And I think I'm just really on the bandwagon of Trevor Lawrence and Trey Lance, especially if I can't land one of those guys like a Lamar Jackson, a Kyler Murray, or whatever.
For sure. I think I'll actually add to that here, Ty, before we biggity bounce. I am very high on another rookie quarterback as well, and that's Justin Fields. He's he to me is what Trey Lance is to you. He's like the guy this year. I've got him at 119 overall. 113 overall, and ECR has him at 148. So I'm 35 spots high. So I think exactly like you said, he's the guy that gives you the Konami aspect if you miss out on one of those Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murrays, and Justin Fields is that for me with Allen Robinson as the alpha. Darnell Mooney, who I'm also high on versus ECR, being that deep target guy. And I think Justin Fields is the man that can put it on him. So much like those rookie wide receivers, opportunity abounds for these rookie quarterbacks, and it could be a very historic quarterback class from 2021, my man.
And I'm with you. I want Fields over guys like Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, Baker Mayfield. Like, I'm taking the shot. Maybe Tua is a different story, but I'll take the shot on a Justin Fields just because of that athleticism. We were saying basically, he's not the next coming of Michael Vick. Like, he's that athletic, and the only worry is that he went to Chicago, who kills quarterbacks and can't do anything with them. So hopefully he bucks that trend. And I know I actually have, kind of beat the drum about this being the hottest seat regime in all of football when it comes to Ryan Pace and head coach Matt Nagy. So there's that element to it as well. And the assumption of rational coaching is definitely harder to get on board with when it is those guys. So does Andy Dalton start? Does he get his week 2 revenge game against the Bengals? Maybe, but I think we've been saying since the day that he was drafted that week 4 against the Lions at home for the Bears feels like a really money spot for Justin Fields at the very latest. So don't mind stashing Justin Fields as well. Just have to keep in mind that you don't win your league at the draft. So if you're taking some of these stash guys, you can't do it if you're 0-3. You might have to drop these guys, and it might be tough decisions. But having said that, that's why we have roster construction. That's why we build a fantasy team. We don't just add a bunch of guys we have to stash and wait for. So I think that is just something you have to factor in with some of these guys. But yeah, I think we definitely got out a lot of the players that we are the highest on, some names to circle for folks heading into their fantasy drafts this weekend, maybe.
Yeah, dude, this was a really fun episode. And I know, like I said off the top, I've got one of my really important home league live in-person drafts coming this Sunday. And I think it's important to get dialed in on our ranks. So I hope we offered some value for any of our listeners tonight. We did have a little segment planned here to pit some of our ranks against each other. Ty, maybe we'll do a little pre-record off the side on that, because that was going to be a really fun conversation. We're just at about a minute or an hour and 8 minutes here, and so I really want to make it digestible for folks to listen to our ranking stuff. So you might just get a little bonus episode, folks. So before we ride out, I do want to mention something really big that's coming for True North. We are getting ready to launch a brand new website. It's been in the books for a little while. Lots of work has been done from the crew, and we are very, very close to launching. I think by the end of this week, we should have it out. So make sure you keep an eye on the socials, because we will be hooting and hollering about that. And it's been a lot of work from all the teams. So really hope anyone who follows us, who likes our work, will go there and find some resources and give us some feedback and let us know what you want to see from the True North team, because 2021 is going to be a really big year, not only for football, but for our team and the content machine that is True North Fantasy Football. So just thanks to all of the team. Really appreciate all the work and the support in the website build there. And another plug I want to give, Ty, is that we will be bringing our Saturday night show from last week, The Spot. We will be bringing that back on air this season. So every Saturday night, we got together, we ran down every matchup, told you some start and sit stuff, some guys you want to attack, some trends that we've been seeing over the season thus far. It's a great show every Saturday night. The motley crew of True North team members get together. Sometimes there's a couple of bevies. We like that. Shout out to Brian. And, it's just a good time to sit and kick with us.
Shots fired.
Yeah, well, his shots drank, buddy. Jesus. No, we love you, Brian. We love you, Brian. Yeah, it was entertaining and a lot of fun to just hang out with the boys. So look out for that on Saturday nights every week this year. And look out for,
speaking of Brian at the FF Aviator, make sure you check out his Dynasty Radar piece. Very good piece that he put out today or yesterday.
Just dropped today.
I read it today, so yeah.
Very good.
Read.
Yeah, and that can be found at truenorthffb.com. Our Twitter is at truenorthffb. This particular show has a Twitter account at TNFFpod. Please go support us and subscribe to that. We want to get that follower count up there, just for the pod specific account, as well as all of our other socials. So that's enough of me yapping, Ty. Until next week, hope you guys enjoyed the rankings episode. Subscribe to that YouTube channel and check out Viridian Global for all of our merch. But we will see you next week. The season is almost here, people. Peace.